Okay. Okay. Week three, Pace Seminar, where we discuss all things Pace. We have the students first place as KVH. Those not in with KVH come give a Pace talk, open Q&A. And what we did at that point, we weren't live streaming and whatnot. Then came COVID and everything was shut down, and we live streamed it from my basement. And then the question is, we live streamed it from the KVH offices. Rabbi Strauss reached out this year and says, "You come back to Kadima and do it at Kadima." I'm like, "Let's live stream from Kadima." So here we are, 2023, live streaming our pre-Pesach webinar from Congregation Kadima Torah's Moshe. I've spent a significant amount of time over here between COVID and now. The Basin actually at one point was the Boston Basin, KVH affiliate, was operating as a Kadima Torah's Moshe during times of COVID when we needed a safer space to operate. We had the outdoor space we were using just in general. So our Simchas Torah menu as well. Yeah. So spent a nice amount of time over here at Kadima. Thank everyone for joining live, joining online. We're happy to have everyone. A lot of questions. The Ask KVH email address did get bombarded with questions. Very happy, a lot of good questions. The other thing I'd like to show, as you may have noticed, in the past years, we worked on a Pesach guide. It was a black and white print guide. We improved it every year. And this year we went full out and we got our guide. So we're hoping everyone enjoys it. There's a print version. It looks like my background is blurred. I'm gonna try to unblur that so people can see what we're talking about. See what we got going here. There we go, a little better. So for those in person, you see it, some of you had copies of it. Thought we printed enough. I figured people have it online. Printed enough, dropped it off in some shelves. Shelves calling me back, need 30 more copies. We have staples here. We have articles about Pesach, articles about food in general, some of the behind the scenes about KVH getting ready for Pesach and whatnot. Getting ready for Pesach extends as far south as Florida. We do Pesach productions, obviously up north over here and all around. So Pesach starts going back planning. Planning starts after one Pesach is over. You start planning. Some years can start December, other years, but always going to be in January for sure. Doing Kosher Pesach productions at the local area, but as far as questions here. I know we're going to get bombarded with questions. I don't want to catch people. What do you think? What? This is around Easter. You're crazy rabbit. What are you doing? The big we were free. We were free. We had their gold and silver had it all. Had it all. They were beaten. And when we weren't just free, we were victorious. Why did we leave? Should have stayed. Established the kingdom of Israel right there. Moses, Moshe Rabbeinu, get the king, obviously, have Hashem, maybe Malchus based David, whatever it is. We ran away. We had it all. Yeah, granted, we took a lot of it with us. We had it all, and we left. To add one more part, we'll follow up with this at the end. So now everyone can think about it and be distracted because it is a great question. My daughter's been asking it to people why we left, and it kind of like befuddles them. Like, what? First we left, but why? The answer is simple and complex at the same time. It's a multifaceted answer. But I will say this: we didn't just leave the place where we were enslaved. We left the place. It was one of the best places in the world. Place that is compared to Gan Eden. Now I see as a Valkyrie among us already shaking his head. Can anyone else like think about it and at the end tell me which pasuk compares Mitzrayim to Gan Eden? I think the Valkyrie right away. No, I figured he would know. But Mitzrayim is compared to Gan Eden, and we left. We ran away. We could have stayed. Why did we leave? Okay, now we'll get to all the stuff. Often we start with koshering, and you get requests back and forth. Some people are like, no one wants to hear about koshering. Everyone knows how to do it. They want to hear about products. And then someone else calls me like, you didn't talk about koshering enough. We have more questions about koshering, so you can't win. So I think last year we started with koshering. This year we'll start with some products. One of the things I want to talk about, some of like the behind the scenes, not just in KVH, but like actually related to your Pesach right now. You're going shopping. We've gotten questions about it. They asked KVH, email got questions about this. Some people may have noticed, and it's not like, oh my gosh, I'm deathly ill. I need something. Rabbi, give me a heter for something. This is something more minute, but something that KVH and Hashgacha like KVH have to deal with. And just because one agency dealt with it one way, how do we deal with it? What am I talking about? Some of you may have seen a Kosher alert regarding the series brand beverages. They make these nectars, these great fruit nectars, I'm going to say, phenomenal. And they bear two certifications: the South African baked in, and the Star K. And they had a Star KP on them, and the Star K issued an alert that these products are not approved by Star K for Pesach. They're not certified by Star K, and there were various revisions of the alerts that I received. I received some via Star K personnel via WhatsApp that I'm friendly with, colleagues of mine. I received some via the internet, general other people's alerts, and then I received a very formal one from the Star K. Finally, I followed up with clarification. It said the Star K alert. I should really find it. It's actually a very important one, but it said to the effect that the product is not certified by Star K, but it is kosher for Pesach. It did not meet the Star K's standards for certification for Pesach, but it was indeed kosher for Pesach. What does that mean? And how do we deal with that? How do you deal with that as a consumer? And how do I deal with that as directing another agency? So now that product is on my shelf. What do we do about that? And how does the rabbi of the congregation advise congregants who purchase the product? Do they need to return it? Can they use it? Can they just have it in the Pesach? The issue at hand over here, and this is my understanding, obviously, from talking to the Star K, the issue at hand over here were certain enzymes. When certain juices, fresh pressed juice, we're now going to be certifying, through me and hopefully some KVH, we'll be certifying a hotel for Pesach. Kosher, you go in the morning over there, and what we do all day long in Pesach hotels, we work hard as mashgichim. Everyone else eats all day long. It's great food, phenomenal. It's not good broad food. It's shocking what they can do these days. But fresh squeezed juice every morning is like one of the highlights. But fresh squeezed juice doesn't stay looking so fresh when it sits on a shelf even for a minute amount of time. In various juices look cloudy and whatnot. They need clarifying agents. So often that comes in the form of enzymes. Other times you can have a serious Pesach concern. Apple juice, for instance, you can be using starch husks. So for Pesach, some agencies allow them to use rice husks, rice hulls, because it's kidney out, it's not going to be a finished product. But they can be using hummus-based husk for something for a starch agent to clarify the product. Some interesting things. So in this case, there could be an enzyme. It appears that there was an enzyme used in this product that may have been kidney, may have been from a derivative. Now you have to understand, and these enzymes bear no shape or form of what they came from. Okay, so in regards to kidneys, OU and other agencies actually allow it to be used with lechatchila. Diet Coke, you'll see, especially coming from Israel, you'll see the regular Coke has Hara Blando, considered by many to be one of the strictest hashgachas in the world. I think the strictest hashgacha in the world, and whole certified be regular Coke for Pesach, obviously with whatever stringencies they have. And the Diet Coke is only Rabbanah. The OU certifies Diet Coke for that. And aspartame is one of the examples of kidneys style. It can be kidneys derived, but if there's no resemblance to kidneys, so many are makel. Not everyone, many are makel, and that even if we're strict about kidneys, we're not strict about saying derived from kidneys if there's no resemblance. Whereas we would be strict. Okay, it will be treated as something that came from double offset. That was prohibited. Any derivative of it, even in its new form, we're still going to be strict about it as long as it's in an edible form. And in this case, it is. want to eat it, but it serves an edible benefit. Okay, we're having difficulties hearing. Have to move the computer closer. Please comment if it's any better now. I should have a microphone next time. Um, to talk about so these series juice products had a enzyme in them that was derived possibly from chametz. Wasn't clear. It's still not 100% clear to me. Is it sometimes that it's from that they weren't sure if it's kitnius or chametz, or that the product it came from is a suffix chametz? It's not 100% clear to me. Either way, it's a suffix if it was chametz or not. The minute amount of enzymes used in these products is bottled. For Svardim, this is an easy answer. They go that they don't worry about this even in many other cases where Ashkenazim would worry about it. There's a concept of something comes back to life, even if it was bottled. Can it come back to life on Pesach? Because chametz is usher, even is prohibited, even the minute amount. So then it doesn't matter if it's bottled b'shishim or not. If it was nullified 160, okay, another share for another time. All about that. In this case, we're talking about two liquid something in a liquid form. Even Ashkenazim would agree. So Starkey says, we're not comfortable putting our Pesach stamp on it. But technically, it's kosher Pesach. Interesting concept, and something we discuss every year. Those who those who are lenient with or drink milk that is not chalav Yisrael, what's known as chalav stam, and they cannot find the KFP certified ones. What do we advise them every year? Purchase it before Pesach. There may be minute amounts of chametz, trace elements of chametz in there from the vitamins. Once you purchase it, it's bottled. In our case, it's already in our case specifically. Our case would be the butchery or another store where it was already owned by a Jewish, or could be a Jewish distributor. It is already nullified. You don't have to worry about it. Maybe in Stop and Shop you would have the issue buy it before Pesach. But if you go into the butchery, what do I advise a client right now? And this is something that the VOD, the rabbinical board of the VOD, has to come together to discuss and come up with a formal policy. The certifier doesn't want to do it because we put our name on things that are only lechatchila. But at the end of the day, they write in their alert, it is kosher for Pesach. So you have a multifaceted question over here. I'm jumping the gun, and I already know some of my rabbis are going to want to fire me for this. We didn't make a decision yet. Why are you talking about it? I'm not giving you the VOD's final decision. The VOD will release a formal decision. We didn't issue an alert because we felt that issuing an alert prematurely, you're just sending out the Star K's alert with some people scrambling. What's the question? Is it kosher Pesach? Is it not kosher Pesach? This and that. So it's something that needs to be deliberated how you want to handle it. And then there's another question: how does a rabbi want to answer a congregant's personal? So these are things that come up every year, right? Whether it's this or something else, and then you have products that are supposed to be KFP but don't have the KFP symbol in it, and it wasn't on the OUs, and so on and so forth. So some of the behind the scenes of how we get the product. So this is the product we're dealing with right now. We're going from the butchery, but the question is, can we let the butchery sell? You have a lot of things. Someone it could be a big loss for someone. These are all the things that rabbis come together to debate, have a halachic debate, and the Ben Adam Chaveru actually takes effect over here in Yeridei halacha, or over here will be Orachaim halacha, where is there a loss to someone? If there's a significant loss, that actually has ramifications in kashrus halacha. I want to talk a little bit about supplements for children. We're going to try to get to everyone's questions. Open the chat over here. We're going to try to stick to the computer as much as possible, even though I like to move around, because apparently when I move around, the sound degrades. Okay, here we are. Supplements for children, or other people. You find lists, and I'm not gonna go through every single product. If someone has a specific question, we will try to address the very specific product questions because the OU provides lists, CRC provides lists, KVH is smaller, so we have a smaller limited list of items that are approved for children, particularly young children, who might have a status of chayla by sakana, or chaylim, who are not in, you have sick people who are not in immediate danger, but they're sick, so there's other leniencies to rely on. In terms of those lists, it's important to understand, not to take them flippantly and say, the rabbis are just being machmir. Some of them can have fairly serious concerns where the OU or the CRC in their halachic determination say we're willing to rely on a lenient opinion over here, whom we normally don't follow because for sick individuals, etc. This is not a flippant thing. Recently someone egg matzah, what's the big deal? People are stringent for no reason. These are serious halachic debates. Shulchan Aruch. And we can go through a whole nother shear of how halacha is broken down. I'm sure Rabbi Strauss talked about it at some point, or we'll talk about it. You have concepts of like how do Ashkenazim have different halachas than Sephardim and so on and so forth. These are serious debates. These are not flipping things like, I just want to be Sephardi today. I want to be Ashkenazi today, whatever fits. So it's important that when OU says this is for sick people, for infants or whatnot, it's important to follow those guidelines. Sometimes you'll find things that changed. You'll find a milk supplement that changed, and this happened last year significantly. What happened? KVH actually had a facility where this was going on. You have a soy product, a soy dream or a rice dream or something like that, which, yeah, there may be enzymes in there. We don't want to certify the chatchila, but and maybe there's even more concerns. And then comes the company and says, we're going to run oat milk on the same line. Oats, according to, I think, most poskim, are chametz because they're steamed. So now we want to run oat milk. So all the leniencies we had, a lot of the leniencies may have just gone out the window because now that equipment is chametz. So maybe we'll figure out that running the product is really a koshering b'diavad and whatnot. But again, it really throws a wrench into what was accepted previously, for sick people and for infants. It can really throw a wrench into that, and that happened in previous years. Okay. As far as general products, we're gonna jump to general products just as a review. So you have food items. There are certain food items that are considered generically kosher Pesach without specific certification. Examples that we give are cocoa powder, which is 100% domestic cocoa powder, baking soda. Coffee is a new one that KVH, based on reflecting upon our own and investigating our own facilities, ground coffee, unflavored ground coffee was everyone always said, don't worry about it. It's fine for Pesach, right? One of the things we know that on Pesach, similar to the milk, we tell people to buy the milk before Pesach because there might be a minute amount of chametz, and we want it to be nullified before Pesach. There is a claim to be made that there is the same issue with unflavored coffee. Even now, I can't speak for everyone's coffee houses, but we have coffee roasters, even fairly large ones, that are grinding flavored and unflavored. So the flavoring will happen later. I'm sorry, I shouldn't say grinding because the flavoring usually happens later. You could have flavoring in the beans itself, which can potentially create a problem. Now they actually, some places are doing very unique products, and they're soaking coffee beans in bourbon and whatnot. So that can create its own set of issues. But I don't know how widespread. What we discovered is widespread: a packing line where you're packing flavored coffee and unflavored coffee on the same lines. They don't wash those lines because you don't want to get water in there, mess everything up. So they flush it with coffee. Is there a potential for minute amounts, especially if we're not dealing with allergens? A minute amount of flavored coffee could be left in there on Pesach. We are very, very much convinced, based on my own personal research, that we've seen it. Yeah, there is minute amounts of coffee left on that packing equipment that can make their way into the unflavored coffee. Why certification agencies would treat it different than they would the milk, the non-Pesach milk from the store? I have a few reasons why not. KVH recommendation is to purchase it before Pesach. Okay. Now you're going to see the OU does not require that. So again, someone wants to follow the OU. We do have several reasons why it might be different. One of them might be there's a bigger chance of a chametz derivative that's nullified ending up in the milk than there is in the coffee. But again, because in the coffee, what we're saying is we don't know for sure that any unflavored coffee ended up in there, and the flavor might be a suffix chametz. We don't know, every flavor is different and where it's produced from, and if it's an alcohol-based flavor and so on. So you have maybe more sveikos, you have more chances of there not being a problem than by milk. We know for sure the vitamins are in there. We know for sure the non-approved Pesach is in there. Whether or not it's for sure a problem or not, that goes up for debate. Whether it's definitely a chametz derivative, that goes up for debate. So that might be a key difference between the coffee and the milk. Though our recommendation is still, if you don't have to, buy it before Pesach. Therefore, you know for sure if there was a minute amount of chametz, it is nullified. So that's a change that you'll find in the KVH guide from last year to this year. You have a similar custom with eggs. The post can make a reference. You should preferably purchase it before Pesach in case there was a minute amount of chametz that led to in the egg. Frozen fruit with additives. The reason we recommend they be purchased before Pesach is almost all fruit and vegetables that are washed, pre-cut fruit, pre-cut vegetables, have some additive in it. Not all, We have discovered places that are not doing anything, but almost all of them have something in there, whether it's a kill step, a preservative, or whatnot. Now, this is buckled, it's nullified, it's way nullified. Okay. Um, the additive they use can be citric acid, can be acetic acid, can be paracetic acid. An item like citric acid can be a chametz derivative. Citric acid is generally derived from a sugar. The sugar that they're going to use is derived from a grain. Whatever grain is more plentiful is the one they're going to use. In the US, the most plentiful grain or legume is corn. So most of your citric acid is going to be corn-based. And they use all their science to turn something sweet into something citrusy, acidic. In Europe, in France particularly, where you're or Ukraine, Russia, wherever they're doing it, where you have laboratories that are synthesized that are doing it, your main grain is going to be wheat. So very likely your sugar base is going to be a wheat sugar base. So those are times where, depending where the citric acid is from, before someone says that all the citric acid in the U.S. is anything you're going to find in the U.S. is all U.S. based, it's incorrect. We have seen citric acid coming from Europe at U.S. based facilities, including our facilities. It's usually not the case, but it does exist. So instant coffee needs to be approved for Pesach. There are some that are certified. The one that comes to choice is the choice. The one that comes to mind is the Taster's Choice instant coffee, the regular one, the red bottle, not the decaf. I have to look up, but the red one is approved for Pesach by the OU. It needs to be approved. That's the kind. It's not the type of item that it doesn't need Pesach certification. Whereas where the OU is saying that the regular ground coffee unflavored doesn't require Pesach certification, the instant coffee requires approval. Okay, so whether the OU is saying that it has an OU and we're saying it's okay without specific Pesach certification is different than saying unflavored ground coffee is fine without any certification. So there's a key difference over there. One big item we get questions about every year is lactate. Um, Milk substitutes like that. Lactate specifically, the OU approves purchasing it before Pesach, similar to regular milk that doesn't have Pesach certification. Purchase it before Pesach, so it's nullified. We mentioned milk, nuts, plain, no additives, no BHA, BHT, or whatever preservatives they want to use that, again, could potentially have a chametz or kitnius derivative that we don't want to certify, but plain nuts, non-roasted, they need to be raw. Roasted already presents, what goes on in the roaster already presents issues, because in the roaster, they could be seasoning nuts in a roaster itself. KV is just certified roasted nuts for Pesach, and they do glazed nuts and all sorts of other stuff in the nut roaster. So once it's roasted, all bets are off. That could be real chametz equipment over there. Ground nuts are potentially a problem due to the packing environment, etc. So ground nuts need Pesach approval. Again, certification depends if the certifier says we were there. The famous one is there is a product in Costco, almond flour. The Costco almond flour has been researched by Star K and said we've approved of this one, but it's a type of product that does require a specific approval of Pesach, whereas raw nuts not containing any additives, preservatives, are approved whether they're halves, wholes, pieces, shelled, except for ground. Non-iodized salt, again, is an example of something that does not need Pesach approval. No additives. You got to make sure there can, when you look in salt, people often, the list said, oh, non-iodized, so they're looking for non-iodized salt. Iodized can, again, be a kitnius or potentially chametz derivative, but there's another issue. I think a bigger issue is what they call the free-flowing agent. There can be some sort of dextrose, and that can definitely be a bigger problem. That is, dextrose is likely kitnius straight out, not kitnius nishtana. Okay, so understanding what it is, you don't have the heter necessarily you would have by Diet Coke, etc., where it's completely removed from its original kitnius source. So looking out for additives to salt that they use to keep it free flowing in case of moisture content is definitely very important. Sugar. Last year, there used to be a thing, white sugar did not require, granulated white sugar did not require Pesach certification. Last year, we decided it does based on our research. Again, when you go back to processing aids and enzymes, there was a potential that a colleague of mine found they were using a potentially chametz-based processing aid. That was something we did not want to approve for Pesach without Pesach certification. There is plenty of Pesach sugar. The Domino brand of sugar, I believe most of their sugars are certified for Pesach, formally certified OKP. Again, water with no additives is approved. I did get written confirmation that Kirkland water, kind of water at Costco, even with additives, is approved. We're not talking about flavors. We're talking about minerals added, etc. Those are approved. The Dasani water as well, which is mineral added water, is approved by OU as well. Kitchen items. Most kitchen items, again, there are people who are machmir. Most kitchen items do not require Pesach certification. There are people who want anything that comes in food contact. Differentiate between there are people who want everything on Pesach to have certification. Laundry detergent, and kol hakavod to them. It's not something that I would make light of. I would point out, when people talk about making light of things, I just want to digress for 1 second. Yeah, a lot of times Pesach cleaning gets a bad rap, and it's important. Mental health is very important, and everyone has to take into account what works for them and their family. But when you hear about someone scrubbing their walls for Pesach in their kitchen, okay, where they have kids, and the walls by our kitchen table get pretty dirty with food, especially ketchup and ice cream. There is in Shulchan Aruch, it says that the minhag is to scrape the walls and chairs and the kisos and the kosalos that have food contact. So that could be a backsplash, that could be, so even if you're doing something that it doesn't work for you, whether it's just too difficult for you, it wasn't your custom growing, whatever reason you're not doing something, someone else doing something doesn't make it ludicrous. I think it's important to take into account, and vice versa as well. Someone who's following strict letter of the law because for whatever reason it's not their custom or something's not working out for them, and they are following the minimum halacha, that has to work for them as well. So it's very important to keep that to keep that in mind when we hear what other people are doing or get together and banter about what's wrong with Pesach and talk about what's right. So talking about things like pans, aluminum foil, bags, cheesecloths, cupcake holders, cups, etc. Dishwashing detergents, napkins, paper towels. People talk about the starches in them. These things are not real from its concerns. Containers, coated paper plates should have some sort of approval. If they're uncoated, it's less. It's not an issue. I think wax paper is one exception. Wax paper and parchment paper should have kashrus in general. There are different types. There's Quilon. There are, whether it's a silicone based or a Quilon based one, they should have it. People think something says all natural. All natural. What could be wrong with that? And we'll get to that. We'll talk about that more in general. What could be wrong with something all natural? There could be a lot wrong with something all natural. Pork is natural. I'm sorry. Yeah. So like you pointed out, lobster is all natural. Pork is, yeah. Yeah. Animals are natural, and you have companies that do all natural products. I, I digress just for a minute. Can you have, let's say it's vegan and all natural. Bad can it be? It could be so bad. It's vegan and it's all natural. Vegan, all natural. How bad can we be? It can be pretty bad. So one example we found was you take an item out. I'm digressing again. We'll get back to it. I hope you don't mind. Take an item like you have all these alternative protein products that are all vegan. Impossible, remind me all the names, whatever it is, Beyond Beef and all the other ones in between. And now they got seafood products, fake alternative shrimp and not crab we had for years, but we've gone all out over here. Okay. Impossible pork. We'll figure out what the OU comes down on that eventually, when they change their minds, don't change their minds. But we've gone all out. What happens when you have the novelty items among us? So you have your regular alternative protein, and you have your novelty items. You have your chicken nuggets. You have your breaded items. Those are what are known as novelty items. Those are not the standard thing. So someone gets good at doing something, right? So you stick to what you're good at. Just because you know how to make alternative proteins or you know how to make good Tyson chicken doesn't mean you know how to make a chicken nugget. Well, guess what? Out there's a company that is great at making chicken nuggets or fried shrimp products. So if they're good at that, they can do it. They can do a good job on the alternative proteins as well. You outsource it to them. And now they are doing it on the same equipment. One place we researched, not only were they using the same fryer, so now take an item like a breaded item, okay? These things are, how do you cook a chicken nugget in 5 minutes? Ever try cooking a chicken in 5 minutes? Even a small chicken leg? Can't cook it in 5 minutes unless you're grilling it hot and fast. They par fry it for you. So that's fried a little bit. That way you get home, take it out, pop it out of the freezer, pop it into your oven. 5 minutes later, your kids have breaded shrimp and breaded chicken nuggets. All fake, of course. Where's that stuff being fried? We came across a place frying it not only in the same fryer, in became oil. Filter the oil, clean it out, use it for the alternative protein. Yeah, here's your vegan alternative protein that is like 100% trace. What happens when you find that in a kosher restaurant? Not by the VOD, but yeah. Because what could be wrong with the vegan product? How bad could it be? That's how bad it can be. Real trace, real trace. Okay. Yeah. No, it's not a problem to keep it around. It's a problem. It's a problem with cooking. Okay. Household items in general, KBH is not machmer that it should need. There are folks when we talk about household items. I'll give some examples. We talk about soaps and shampoos and candles and other all sorts of cleansers. KBH does not take a stringent opinion that these items require Pesach certification. Uh, Some might take an opinion about denatured alcohol. You have items, some deodorants, perfumes, other items that have denatured alcohol. Yes. Okay, we're getting right there. So denatured alcohol. Very good question. Is it royal achilas kalov? It is not, but it's very easily to how do you denatured alcohol? You basically you're adding a denaturing agent to make it not roy. A denaturing agent. Whatever they're adding something in there to make the alcohol not very yeah attractive to people. But the way you make alcohol is you distill it. You just distill it again, and that agent is gone. So there are those who believe that because it's such a simple process and it's not a complex process to undo it, it's not considered in a real achilas kalov. It's not a position the KBH takes, but it is a position that exists among Rabbanim, that there needs to be a more ein royal achilas kalov, completely spoiled and whatnot, not something that can be removed with a process simple as distillation. I mean, we all have spills in our kitchen. Moonshine. Okay. We're going to we have a request to talk about pet food. Now, pet food did not make it into this year's guide. We discussed it right after. So it didn't make it into the guide. Next year, pet food will make it into the guide. Pet food we're going to get some more products soon, but because we had the pet food request, we're going to talk about the pet food now. The paper that had the pet food information. One second, let's come back to pet food. We may have to come back to pet food. Okay, we will come back. We will circle back to pet food. I will mention right now that pet food is a very serious concern. Pet food often contains chametz, real chametz. So the two biggest problems you have with kosher and pet food is milk and meat and chametz. Those are the two items that are prohibited to have any benefit from. So feeding to your pet definitely qualifies as a benefit from, as a selling it. Pretty serious issue. The milk and meat issue is less of a concern because it would in order to be prohibited from having deriving any benefit from it, it has to be asur midaraisa. A lot of the basar v'chal is not going to be midaraisa. So a lot of your milk and meat is not going to be biblically prohibited. Think about it. Anytime if it's a poultry-based item that has no meat source in there and has dairy in it, it's not going to be biblically prohibited. You'll be able to feed it to your pets. If it's tameo, a non-kosher species, according to most, is not going to be biblically prohibited and won't be a problem. Obviously, if you're talking about nevela and treifa, that's when things get more complex if it's biblically prohibited. But again, it's less of an issue. It's not a non-issue. Chametz obviously is a huge issue. A lot of the pet food is real chametz. Before someone says an royal achilas kalov, no, it's actually to feed your dog. So it's definitely royal achilas kalov. And I'll tell you this, a lot of it is royal achilas ado. Some of it's better than our food. We have factories that have sections specifically for food. And when I thought it's because they're using inferior product, they're like, no. We can't use some of the product that we use in human foods. We have certain standards we need to keep for the pet food, whether it's because pets, there's examples of items that pets are allergic to that humans are not, or just in general, people are more concerned about what they put in their pet's mouth than their own. They actually use a better products in the pet food. We're gonna try to. We're gonna get back to that. The mic is becoming a big issue. I think next year I got to wear a mic. Okay. See if we have any specific questions. Yeah. Yep. It's a great question. Cheese products, yogurt products, cheese products, cream cheese, anything that aside from milk and only unprocessed milk, unflavored milk, definitely requires Pesach hashgacha. Whether it's because of the flavors that are added by cheese, you have a bigger concern of the cultures. We'll talk about that we'll talk about that for 2 minutes right now. Anything that has any additives to it, whether it's flavoring or enzymes or cultures that create the product, definitely need Pesach hashgacha. In the example you give of cheese, the issue is a far bigger concern. The cultures are actually the cultures and the enzyme in the cheese. So you have your enzyme is what we all know is the rennet or the microbial rennet that we use for our cheese, for most of our cheese nowadays. We do have kosher rennet cheese. That's the enzyme, and your cultures are will give it the flavor profile, the mouthfeel, and the color and the texture to the cheese. All those things are built by what cultures you use. You have primary cultures that create the essence of the cheese, and you have subcultures, so what they call secondary cultures that finish. You have so many varieties of cheese, and those all happen on a microbial level. Fascinating microbiology lesson. I've learned so much about that. I think I've mentioned this other years. We'll just finish this. So those things are actually what are known as a mimid. They produce the item. Those things are not bottled. They're not nullified because when we see that cheese, it's like we're seeing that culture there because that cheese could not exist. Whereas those vitamins are added because in milk because those are government regulations. You wouldn't know the difference if they were there or not, except they couldn't be sold to you if they weren't there. Whereas with the cultures and the enzymes which build the cheese, those are the fundamental building blocks of the cheese. When we see the cheese, we see those as here, even if they're used in minute microgram amounts. Hope that clarifies that. Okay. The other issue is even milk, when you don't have, let's say you don't have the cultures of the enzymes, if it's flavored milk, obviously a flavor would require being kosher Pesach because of the equipment the flavor is produced on, or the flavor itself could be an alcohol-based flavor. There are various ways of producing the flavors. Either way, it requires certification for Pesach. Another question? So you don't need it. You don't need it. At least KVH position is that it doesn't need Pesach certification. Okay, so that's what we just discussed. That's denatured alcohol. That alcohol in its current format is not fit for consumption. In its current format, that's what we just discussed before. There is a way to reformat it and make it fit for human consumption. And if you were a Russian soldier on the front, you probably would drink it anyway because you needed something. That's all you had. But in its current format, it is not fit for human consumption, and therefore the KVH position and the position of many other cautious agencies, not all, but many, is that it does not need Pesach certification or any certification for that matter. Okay. Yes, yes, because even cream cheese, whether it's an acid set cheese or a rennet set cheese, it's going to have the cultures in there that create the flavors. Oh yes, so KVH is involved in this. We have an artisanal cheese farm in Vermont that we certify, and usually we did special process productions, and it was becoming an almost monthly or bi-monthly operation that we were doing up there. You can find the cheeses under the cheese guy label. So the Vermont cheeses, we oversee the production. A lot of work goes into that. You talk about the farm, the owner, the management, and the ownership of the Old World Marketplace Cheese Guy Company and coordinating mashgichim with us, the koshering. A lot of work goes into it, and even more work goes in to sourcing the kosher for Pesach cultures. So the cultures can be grown on they need a substrate to grow it on. So that culture's got to eat sugar. That could be a chametz base. That's the concern. What are they using as the base to grow the cultures? We can give a whole shit actually on that because there's other concepts of reculturing something several times until it doesn't exist and whatnot. We spent several hours. We spent several hours. We spent hours and hours researching it, including calling Circle K. Circle K certifies the cultures. Eventually, we tracked down all the cultures we needed around the world. Whether we researched it in Italy, in France, in Germany, in the U.S. We found all the cultures we needed kosher Pesach, and we keep them in cryoprotect and freezer storage. So have them for years to come. Any other questions on these products now before we move on? We're gonna move on to costing soon. Let's see. We have here. We're gonna get back to pet food in a minute. Okay. I am going to just jump to some food questions. Some food questions that came in online on the email. Get to some of these. So one of the I'll start with the most recent and go down. Starbucks via instant coffee. I did notice that the OU is approving with an OU on it. Via does require certification. The OU is approving the plain unflavored via the regular the not the decaffeinated, but they are approving those for Pesach. They do have the OU has a whole host of K cups that they're approving as well. I don't have the OU guide with me, but I'm not going to sit here and read through the whole guide. It is there in the OU guide. We have links on our website for the OU guide, the CRC guide, Star K guide, and of course, front and center, the KVH guide. You can flip through it as a flip book, or you can pick whatever we have up here, and hopefully we'll have more printed. That was that. We have another question regarding triple washed produce. Again, triple washed produce is one of those things we know that there's, in all likelihood, an additive in there that's either kidneys based or far off chance that it's chametz based. So we tell people is to either buy it before Pesach. Our recommendation is to rinse it, but if you didn't rinse it, it is bottled. The small amount of acid they're putting in there as it's nullified. So buying it before Pesach from the strict letter of the law would be fine. If someone wants to be stringent, rinse it before you use it. And it doesn't only apply to triple wash produce, that also applies to any cut vegetables you're going to buy or cut fruit. Be the same thing. Now, if I can digress again on this related to general cautious on cut fruit, people ask all the time, can I buy cut fruit in the store? I travel and this and that. And there's an article I just wrote, it's a fairly brief article, but I'll address that question now. It's a question we get all the time. And I travel a lot, so I'm very partial to that question. Going into a Walmart anywhere in the country and buying cut fruit is huge, huge. And I do it. Wow. That's answer the question. It's important to know there's a difference. It's not a blanket header. You go into a supermarket. I keep this to supermarkets, okay? Because I travel. I go to airline clubs as well, and I don't eat the cut fruit over there. I'll explain the difference right now. These places, either they're getting fruit from a fruit cutting company, which you're not going to have an issue with, or they have a place in the store where they're just cutting fruit and vegetables all day. There's a chance that when they do fruit cups, they also do yogurt fruit cups. The potential for an issue over there is so remote, especially because they have allergen protocols, and they don't put an allergen disclaimer usually on those fruit cups. So it's so remote, it's not a concern to me. When you're in a hotel, someone says, well, hotels have garde-manger rooms where they're just cutting fruit and vegetables all day. I say yes to that. That's true. 5 p.m. when those people go home, and it's 9 p.m. at night at the reception, at the wedding. It's a great wedding. You're all having fun. And they come in. I've seen this firsthand. My father works in Kosher, has seen this. I believe many colleagues have seen this, and they say, we need more watermelon. And you watch the chef take his meat knife that has a grease in it, and he doesn't even wash it. He wipes it on his apron, and he goes and cuts some more watermelon for them. Now, if he was cutting pork with that knife, that's not something I want. Okay? I've seen this quite a few times. I can't say every time. A lot of times you do have conscientious chefs, but anytime if you're in a restaurant setting, airline club, I don't know if I've seen that, but I have seen where they bring out a few pieces of fruit at a time. There's another concept that even, we find in Shulchan Aruch that even if there was a problem with the knife, it would have come off, the grease on the knife would have come off in the first few cuts, and then you have tons of fruit right now, it's in bulk, it would be nullified, that piece and all the other pieces. That would apply in a supermarket setting, in a big setting. Now, in those settings, I don't really have an issue. That I don't think that's going to apply in an airline club where I see them bring out literally a plate of fruit. They go cut one plate of fruit and bring it out. So it's likely not to apply in such a setting. That's why when I'm traveling, I'm in an airline club. I do not eat the cut fruit. Now, if they have whole grapes there that are washed, that's a different story. So I think understanding where you're getting your cut fruit from is very important, and we'll leave it at that. We answered the lactate question. Please purchase it before Pesach. That's the recommendation for OU. Oils and margarines. Shortening it apart. Solid form. So yeah, there's coconut oil available that's certified for Pesach. So why people? So the question goes on to ask, why are olive oil and peanut oil okay for Passover while corn oil is not? Now, the assumption that peanut oil is approved for Pesach, that was a big assumption right there. I think the general Ashkenazic minhag is to consider it kidneys, even though I believe Moshe Feinstein did not consider it kidneys. The general Ashkenazic custom. Is there anyone here who's Ashkenazic who eats peanuts on Pesach? I think it just okay. I just said it's a big assumption. The question made a big assumption. Granted, and things have how things have changed. Okay, so it's a great question. I don't know that peanut oil is generally a refined oil. So the question assumes that peanut oil and olive oil are approved and corn oil is not. Corn oil is definitely considered a legume. It's definitely kidneys. It existed in times of kidneys. Now, while we're on this question, before we address the oil question, I think let's address kidneys in general. If we have 2 minutes for that, quinoa is a huge thing. Is quinoa kidneys or not? Now, quinoa is actually it's like it fits the category of kidneys crystal clear. Okay, it has all the parameters of kidneys. So why shouldn't it be kidneys? But on the other hand, you tell someone that quinoa is kidneys, like you took away my quinoa. How could you do that? It should. It not only fits the parameters of like maybe acting similar to a grain, it's actually used as an alternate crop for wheat. When they have to vary the crops for soil growth and whatnot, they use quinoa is used as an alternate crop. So it has like all the parameters of kidneys. Like so, remote sensing, and this is the opinion that many Rabbanim hold, is that when they made a gezerah, they said this is what went on. This fit into the gezerah. Quinoa was not prevalent then. It appears they did not have quinoa. Quinoa is I think, predominantly South American product. A lot of it comes from Peru, islands over there and whatnot. It didn't exist. So in the areas of the world when kidneys was established as a for Ashkenazim, and therefore Moshe Feinstein felt it was not included in the gezerah of kidneys, even if it looks like it should have been, because they didn't have it, so they couldn't have made a gezerah on it. Whereas corn, it seems like they did have some varieties of corn. Corn is, I think, is widely accepted as kidneys. I have not heard that corn is not accepted. Peanuts, it's hotly debated. So you said peanut oil, they had it with hashgacha for Pesach, now we don't. The big thing is that cottonseed oil is another big one. In Israel, cottonseed oil is considered kidneys. It's a seed. So they're much more stringent. They don't follow Moshe Feinstein's approach that did they have it or did they not have it? More of a question is, if it's a seed or a legume, then it's kidneys, and if not, not. Believe it or not, the Chayadim, one of the preeminent poskim of earlier generations, wanted to consider potatoes kidneys. Can you imagine potatoes being kidneys? Take away our potatoes and our quinoa. That did not take. That did not. I mean, you think about it, we use potato starch especially for people who don't eat gebrocks. We use potato starch in lieu of flour. So, you imagine all our starches were gebrocks. That wouldn't be cool. That didn't take, and it was not. It wasn't accepted. So circling back, the question is why certain oils would be included or not. Now, there was another also not very widely accepted opinion that what Yotze meant kidneys, not just kidneys and kidneys that changed its form, but even just a Yotze, something that was that came from kidneys, even without changing any significantly its form, like an oil or a juice or a syrup, corn syrup, etc., is not kidneys. That is not a widely accepted opinion among Ashkenazim. and we treat oil or syrups that come from kidneys as kidneys. That answers the question of why corn oil, which is widely accepted as kidney, is not it does not have certification for Pesach, while peanut oil apparently used to have. I don't believe you can really find peanut oil that's certified as non-kidney nowadays, but apparently it used to be. Other one. The other interesting one is canola oil. Canola oil is an interesting one. It comes to another thing. Has anyone here ever eaten canola? No, you did. You didn't. You wouldn't want to. Canola is rapeseed oil. Rapeseed was very popular in Europe. So people wanted to say that this should have the same thing as quinoa. They didn't have canola oil. They didn't, but they had rapeseed oil in Europe. So much so that if you go back and look, rapeseed oil was prohibited in the US. That's how canola oil came to be until it was way too high uric acid, and they prohibited it in North America, I think. And then the Canadians, I guess, figured out how to have a low acid thing, and hence was born canola Canada oil and knew a variety of rapeseed oil. So it's very clear that they did have this thing. There are those who wanted to say that canola oil would not be kidneys because the only thing that could be kidneys is something that was eaten, and rapeseed was never eaten, was never consumed. That's an argument that's made for cottonseed oil, believe it or not. So we don't eat cottonseed, but cottonseed oil is widely accepted in the US, even among very strict hashgachas, as non-kidney. So take it or leave it. I hope that answers that question. Moving on to some other food questions, and we're going to get to koshering. We are going to get to koshering. Oh, this is a hard question because this hurts a lot of people. Diabetics ask this all the time, and other people, and anyone who wants low glycemic counts index sugar, coconut sugar. Coconut sugar for Pesach is the big one. Unfortunately, I don't know of any certified kosher Pesach coconut sugar, and the reason is not a Pesach issue. The reason is actually they were finding high infestation rates in the coconut sugar. And all the kosher groups I've been on, like all the ones that were certified, they're like everyone's posting like pictures of all the insects crawling around in the coconut sugar. So it appears to be more of an infestation issue. You can't even find certified coconut sugar right now, even during the year so much. A lot of it was pulled from the market. A lot of it was pulled from the market due to infestation. So unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for the coconut sugar. Why would there be insect issues in the coconut sugar? That's an easy answer. The insects, they don't like for coconut milk is much more is controlled once they produce it. There's a very high level of control. It's bottled, it's canned, it goes out, it's sealed. Coconut sugar is not like that. I mean, once you break it down to the sugars, it's not. It comes in huge what they call super sacks very often. It's very exposed. Correct, exactly. We had a question about Freshbox Farms romaine lettuce. Can KVH produce more of it? The answer is no. KVH has zero control over that. I know they're having some issues. Butchery's been complaining to me about it. The good news is Butchery is trying to bring in, there's another company doing a similar project called Bowery Farms that has, at least part of it has a shkafa from the OU. I'm hoping we're going to see some of that for Pesach, but we're competing with the entire tri-state New York area for that. So I don't know. We'll find out if we can get that. There will be lettuce from our, whether it's washed by mashgichim or we can bring in some more of this not just green, it's not greenhouse grown. This is like indoor vertical farming. This is the wave of the future. Sustainable farming. If you keep it nice and clean, we'll talk about some of the household items we talk about koshering. Yeah, well, so we'll talk about that when we talk about some of the koshering things. The short answer is if you're these things a lot of times boil down to a level of confidence. In my house, I would not use I would use the one for my KVH kit for Pesach. The one that sits in my kitchen, I wouldn't use for Pesach. You look like you're pretty comfortable. You look like you're pretty comfortable to use it. A lot of times, we're going to educate you about the possible concerns, and then some of these things, like the light box, are judgment calls. Okay, where a rabbi can't tell you yes, no, maybe. You can always say maybe. Rabbis like to say maybe. Okay, that looks like the questions from the email listing. Okay. If there's more questions, let me just check Zoom to see if we have any. if we have any Zoom questions. So we covered fresh box farms, we covered the indoor farming, we covered the coconut sugar. Okay. What, as far as what? Well, if it has hashgacha on it, I would assume that it's covering all infestation. The fresh box farm is the proof of Pesach. I think the indoor vertical farm products are not washed. That's the cool part about them. That's you get insane shelf life on them. If you treat like item like fresh box farms properly, I don't know why they don't put one of those food sponges in the bottom of it, but if you put it in there, a piece of paper towel under the lettuce, in our house we get like a 3 week shelf life. So something like I've never seen before. Um, to see more about the coffee, actually, Rabbi Blumberg, I guess, former Rabbi Kadima, actually wrote an article about his experience certifying coffee roasters and why we had slight concerns for Pesach for even unflavored coffee. So it's in the KBH guide, as we discussed earlier. We also have the Stop and Shop there. I do want to mention something. There is a beautiful spread in here, full color page, the Stop and Shops that have dairy, frozen, and grocery. Stop and Shop is very interesting. I know there were a lot of problems in years past, and I'm sure people on Zoom over here, or dozens of people over here, are gonna have questions about this. People here possibly as well. You said that there was gonna be kosher for Pesach cream cheese. I went and there wasn't any. So believe it or not, we actually did a tour with the corporate fellows in charge of these departments at Stop and Shop, grocery, frozen, dairy, and the person in charge of it all. Okay. We did. We were there for several hours. We went to Stop and Shop in Austin, and we walked through with him. And I want to tell you what I did. Okay, can't tell you all the secrets we did, but as a consumer, so we talked from one perspective as a kosher supervising agency who works with them at the bakeries. I also talked to them as a kosher consumer, and I exfoliated them. I raked them over the coals. I told them everything that's wrong with how they do it, and believe it or not, they were receptive. Can't promise you it's all going to be fixed in time for this stuff. In fact, it's not. But they were very receptive. You know, I told them before that this is what I'm going to do. Otherwise, like we're wasting our time. And they were very receptive. We were polite about it, but we did go through with them everything that's wrong with how kosher is marketed at their stores. They were receptive. So one of the issues that we discussed were, and we saw this among numerous products that Stop and Shop markets during the year as kosher, and they also marketed for Pesach as kosher. Example is the Stop and Shop cream cheese. Another example was Stop and Shop seltzer. If you're going to take the special production items and put it in the regular display cases, people who don't care about Pesach, we're not trying to say don't buy it, but differentiate it, put it in the special kosher section or make a special Pesach section. Otherwise, yeah, it's going to be sold out weeks before Pesach. That's just what's going to happen. That's going to happen with the milk. It's going to happen with all the dairy products, and it was happening with the seltzer. If you look on the shelf, if you go to the Harvard Street one in Brookline or the Everett Street one in Alston, you will see because it's nice that they don't just have plain seltzer for Pesach, which KVH does not require certification, unflavored seltzer, even for Pesach. Others have a different position on that. We'll get to that. But they have flavored seltzers. And flavored seltzers, everyone agrees, require certification for Pesach. They're mixed into the regular, what is it, the soda aisle over there. They're all mixed in over there across from Powerades. So that's not a way to market Passover products. Because you got this beautiful Passover section over there. We talked about the issues with that section as well. But the seltzer's not even there. I mean, they have some cases of seltzer there, but you're putting the Passover seltzer in the regular seltzer section. You're putting the Passover cream cheese in the regular cream cheese section. You're gonna lose your target audience. And you do that enough times and people stop relying on you. And then you want to know, there's no kosher demand. Well, there's no kosher demand because you messed up the kosher demand. They were very receptive. I don't think it will be entirely fixed for this Pesach, but we're working on it. I just figured I'd let the public know that, hopefully in future years it will be much better. So you will find that entire section of Stop and Shop, what types of items they're carrying, grocery items, frozen items, dairy items, full page, 3-page spread over here in the guide. As far as kosher for Pesach provisions that you can buy, fully kosher for Pesach, butchery and Zadie's Market are fully approved by KBA. There's something worth noting though, okay? And I thought everything in there has a baseline kosher certification. Occasionally I'll get a question from the consumer. Do you guys accept this hashgacha? I say, listen, I mean, if someone calls me, I say, listen, I can't necessarily recommend it for everyone, or maybe I don't want it being used in my catering kitchens. even in the butchery, sometimes there are products that they sell in the store that I ask not to use in the kitchen. But there is a certain baseline hashgacha. There's a hashgacha, I'll name it. You have Israeli hashgacha, some sofer petach tikva. It's some sofer hashgacha that's got like the old city walls on top of it. Um, they had a partial ban from the Rabbanut Harashit. If the Rabbanut is going to ban them, I told the butcher, I said, listen, I know we KVH has had personal issues with some of the stuff they've approved. We knew firsthand they were approving some pretty bad things. And when the Rabbanut comes along and says we're banning XYZ from them, so that's not a hashgacha we can even let you carry in the store anymore. You kind of lose your baseline hashgacha. But everything there has baseline hashgacha. That is every hashgacha they're the same? Definitely not. So it's definitely a question. If someone says baseline is good enough for me, KVH says this is baseline, I'm fine with it. But it's just something worth knowing that not every hashgacha that this Zaydi's or the butcher carries is on the same level. It all has a baseline of acceptance by KVH, though. I'm gonna get fired by the Board of Rabbis for saying something like that. Okay. Okay, let's move on to koshering. So we're gonna go through the kitchen. We're gonna try to go through order. Basically, we're going to start with the methods of koshering. I know this is in print, but sometimes it's worth explaining it. And people can ask questions as we go along. You have predominantly two methods of koshering, and each one of those methods of koshering splits into further sections. You have what's known as libun, and you have hagala. Okay, so when you go back in the Gemara and you learn the Mishnayos, it says anything that was used in fire, you got to pass through fire. Anything that was used in water, you got to pass through water, and it breaks down from there. But predominantly have what's known as libun, which is scorching. You have hagala, which is known as immersing in boiling water. Breaking down your libun, you have what's known as libun gomer and libun kal. And you can break down libun kal. You have what we call a severe scorching or a complete scorching and a light scorching. We're going to go through now what's required for what. Now, essentially, in halacha, in strict halacha, there's not a different type of libun. It's a machlokas. How much libun do you need? Do you need the severe scorching, where either you remove the top layer from burning it, or it turns glowing red hot, or spark flying? Now, spark flying is an interesting one. We can talk a whole theory on how that works. Maybe different field metal versus unsealed metal, forged steel, unforged steel, things like that. But that's a much longer discussion. That's the severe scorching, and then you have the light scorching, which also has various levels, or maybe not. Where one of the ways they would test the light scorching is if light straw would finish from the opposite side where you were burning it, or that it was touched to the touch, yatzaletus, from both sides. And then we get even further. How much called yatzaletus? We know. Is it 140 degrees, 160 degrees, 170 degrees? So we generally go with the thing that when we're doing sheet metal things and we're torching them, we go 180 degrees, the other side's 175, we know for sure it's yatzaletus. We'll go with that. We'll go with that amount. Okay. I got to step back in over here. So you have your severe scorching, your light scorching, then you have your hagala. You're passing through water. Your primary method is dipping it in boiling water. It's important the water should be actually at a rolling boil or somewhat of a rolling boil while you're koshering. Steps down from there are still items that are used with boiling water, but not necessarily on the fire. So take an item like a sink where you would be pouring a pot of pasta in there. So you're spilling something into it. So how do we kosher it? By spilling boiling water on it. Now it's important when you're spilling boiling water, we'll talk about you need to make sure to hit every spot with a direct flow, and not that it's like rolling down the sink. So we'll talk about various methods of how to do that, how we do it, how consumers can do it, and so on. So there's also items that can't be kosher. Items in general that are known not to be kosher are earthenware items, china items, pottery, concrete, cement. Glass is a machlokas if you're Sephardic or Ashkenazic. The other thing with glass is if there's a concern that it will break from the koshering, you also can't kosher it. Okay, so put that out there. A lot of glass, you dip it in hot water, won't break. But if you're Ashkenazic, the custom is not to kosher the glass, at least for Pesach. Whereas if you're Sephardic, the custom is either that the glass doesn't need koshering or for sure that you can kosher it. I'm sorry? So there is a custom brought down for cold drinking glasses, and it's very important to know this is only for cold drinking glasses. Only used with cold. Okay, no hot. So if it goes in your sink and your chalent pot is in your sink as well, you already might have problems. Or it goes in your dishwasher with chametz, you already might have problems. But if you had exclusively cold drinking glasses, didn't have a dishwasher, and for some reason you know for sure never came in contact with hot chametz, there is a concept of filling them up with water, letting them sit, what's known as mili v'irui. You do that 3 times. You fill it with cold water. It's not generally practiced just simply because of modern households usually don't have a situation where they would be doing that. Um, Very often you're putting them in the dishwasher with hot chametz. So not it doesn't necessarily have a practical application. In not it could, but not necessarily in modern households. Um, okay, let's talk about the most common type of kashering we're going to do is libun kal and Erie. Those are practically. Usually Hagala, you could do Hagala at home, and I'll talk about different ways of doing Hagala at home. But most, if some people the whole year they save all the forks and knives that got mixed up, and they have that whole collection. What do you do with it now? It comes Pesach time. So modern day Hagala, most people are bringing it to communal Hagala. We are having a communal koshering where we're doing primarily Hagala, dipping in boiling water. A week from next Sunday. Oh wow, it's almost Pesach. Uh, so this upcoming Sunday, a week from today, we are having a communal koshering at Young Israel of Brookline. Let me quickly just page 14. Yeah, everyone listening on Zoom, I will remind a note for next year to wear to have a clip on mic. So the communal koshering is Sunday, April 2nd, 2023, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. at Young Israel of Brookline. Um, Things to keep in mind, you should not have used the item with hot in 24 hours. Make sure it's completely clean. You have crevices and whatnot. If you lips on the pot, if something is not completely clean, there are ways of blow torching those areas. We use small torches sometimes, but obviously we don't want to do it to people's pots and pans if it will break it. Um, get your knives in there if there's little nooks and crannies. Make sure it is completely clean. If handles can come off, they can be unscrewed and come off. It's the way to do it. At that point, we will dip it for you, and it would be kosher Pesach. The kalim mikvah to immerse any new kalim will also be open during those hours at Young Israel. The other thing I'll mention over here is, once we're digressing, we do have a home koshering that we offer. We partnered with Yeshiva Or Yisrael. Um, great, great crew of boys. We tried doing it with Maimonides. Didn't come through. Hopefully next year we'll do it with Maimonides as well. But this is our second successful year doing it with YOY, where we train the boys, we provide them equipment, safety equipment, proper caution equipment that actually you probably don't have in your own home. We'll talk about that in a minute. To do a clean, neat job with minimal spillage. Obviously, there's always some water going, but a very neat way to kosher your kitchens. You can go on kvhkosher.org, look in our Pesach section. There's a link there, or you can go in the email where we put this out, and you can schedule your home koshering. Just so no one gets scared off, it says there's a suggested donation of $250. It's a suggested donation. You can donate $50, you can donate $5, you can donate $0. You can write us a nasty email, and we'll still come kosher. We'll still send people to come kosher your home. So the donation is exactly that. It's a donation. Um, Donate whatever you feel is proper. That's the home koshering. So that's why I said Hagala, most people aren't doing. So we're going to focus primarily on the Liban Kal that people do for their ovens, and we'll focus on Iri, that people do for their sinks and counters. Some people just cover their counters, some people just kosher their counters, some people kosher and then cover their counters. Everything depends on your minig. There's sources for all of this. um, let's start with Iri, pouring boiling water. I grew up that we would boil pots of water. You had to so everything was like the last thing you did before. The oven was already self-cleaning. We're in the middle of self-cleaning. We'll get to the even in a minute. And you had all your burners running. You had the biggest pots you had. You boiled them before, and they were all not used for 24 hours. And you had every burner available boiling a pot of water. I mean, you'd grab it with like your mitts, and you'd stand like hunched over the counter so you didn't burn yourself. Hopefully, you tuck towels into the drawer so it didn't become a huge mess, and it became a mess anyway. And then you'd go like spinning it back and forth and like boiling water all over. It was great. A lot of fun. Huge mess all over. I don't know. Maybe some people here grew up like that, maybe not. And then, like I said, as I got older, I discovered there's something called an electric kettle. In Israel, we call it a kumkum or a tea kettle that people have in their homes. Now, tea kettles, you got to boil them, and electric kettles are really, you get like four electric kettles, and they boil relatively fast, and you can get like almost pinpoint precision where you're pouring. It was a lot cleaner, probably a lot more kosher when we kosher with these electric kettles. So I highly recommend it. Costs $14 on Amazon. Proctor Silex kettle. I'll even mention something over here, which is not what we call the Iker Hadin, the strict letter of the law. Some people might know about the hot koshering rock. Anyone familiar with the hot koshering rock? Heating up the rock and then pouring the boiling water over it. There's a very good source in halacha to do that. The problem is the way I've seen it done, and even the way the advertisement shows it being done, it's not being done correctly. So much so that when the Magen Avram talks about this, he says you can't do it on plates that have these flowered designs because you can't hold rock flush against the plate. I'm like, well, then it for sure doesn't work if you hold it up in the air and do it like that. So there's other sources for the koshering rock, but it's not necessarily the safest thing. It's hard to do. It's very so. A lot of people fall back on the strict letter of the law. They don't follow the stringency that they need the hot rock. Now we can talk about that more. That's a whole nother share why you would need that. Another thing called upper gush, but put that aside for a minute. The electric kettle. This is somewhat of a safety thing. If you're wearing a nice like barbecue glove, that's nice insulation, not a cloth glove, not an oven mitt, but if you're wearing a really thick insulated glove, those electric kettles actually the button pops and stops boiling. Shlomo Zalman Auerbach says that you have the benefit of the hot rock process. The point of the hot rock is that it keeps the water hot and boiling as it goes down. Okay, so it doesn't stop the boiling process. He says that if you can pour something boiling while it's on the fire, you have the benefit of the hot rock. So these electric kettles, the ones with the base, you can't do it. The ones that have just plug in and have the heating element inside, you hold the button down while you're pouring the water, and that thing is on the fire. It's boiling away while you're pouring. So that's just another thing. Now it is potentially dangerous. There's hot steam coming out of that area. So if you're going to attempt to do such a thing, make sure you have a very, very well insulated glove, like a big 16-inch or 12-inch barbecue glove. Those things are meant to handle very hot liquids. They're meant to handle a barbecue, meant to handle chickens on the grill or meat on the grill. So you're pretty safe with that. But again, there is a potential safety issue with it. So definitely keep that in mind. Our recommendation again, electric kettle. You go over every spot. So again, I'll stand by the table and show it so everyone online can hear me. So essentially what we're saying is if you have a surface, and you're pouring your electric kettle, you're going to want to go back and forth really slowly. You know, back and forth while it's pouring. So you get an even spill and you're going back and forth. And you're not just splashing the whole thing across the sink. Splash the whole thing across the sink. It's pretty clear in halacha that that's not sufficient for pouring boiling water because it's coming here on one part of the sink and then rolling to the other part. So you're doing your as best as possible. You're trying as best as possible to hit every spot. That's why we would recommend those kettles. When we train the YY boys to kosher, we actually invested a lot of money. We own six $1,200 steam machines now. So steamer. You can buy a steamer for $100 in Home Depot. The custom we follow is, and that's the general custom the poskim we've spoken with, is not to kosher with steam unless it can generate a boiling condensate. Most of the steamers do not generate anything close. Well, Rabbi, if it's steam, it must be 212. Incorrect. It's under vacuum. There's all sorts of ways. The water does not have to boil to get to steam. Okay. In fact, a lot of that steam, you can put your hand on it. It's not boiling. The steamers that we've invested in, I wish for $1,200 we got a better product. But the one thing they do is they have a boiling water setting. And we measure it. We test them from time to time to make sure they're working properly because sometimes they break. So we do test them. We'll take a container, we'll take the nozzle, spray it in there. We'll take a probe thermometer and fill up the water that's filling up in the container. So we're not even like putting it in the steam nozzle. We're simply we're immersing it in the water that's filling up in the container. And we regularly measure temperatures anywhere between 205 and 210. So we're definitely in that boiling range. We may have the link posted on our website, so feel free to buy it, but it is expensive. It's like $1,200 on Amazon. So take it over here. The one thing is it makes it a breeze to kosher because you're not pouring. You literally take a nozzle with a trigger and you just go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. You can turn it upside down to get your faucet and everything. So it definitely makes it a breeze to kosher. As far as that's as far as counters. The other thing you want to make sure on your counters is you're koshering a kosherable surface. So again, if you have a brick counter, which we've seen, cement counters, these are all problematic counters. Um, there are porcelain counters, there are porcelain sinks, non-kosherable materials. Plastic, formica, anything synthetic like that. Our general customers, we do tell people it can be kosher. The CRC position is it can be kosher. Starcase says it cannot be kosher. So again, that comes down to personal minhag. Stone countertops, the general consensus is stone countertops can be kosher. There's a minority opinion that because they're sealed, we treat the surface of the counter with what the material of the seal is, which is usually some sort of synthetic material like plastic, some poly-based material. Some people don't kosher it. Most people kosher stone countertops. Um, Again, ensuring you don't have any cracks or nicks in it, because if you do, you need to ensure that they're very, very clean. If you feel that you can't get in there and clean it, that area must be covered. So again, most of the granite countertops I've seen are very smooth, but if they do get chipped, it's definitely something to be aware of. At the very least, to pour something caustic in there to make sure it's completely gone. Um, as far as sinks go, again, metal sinks is the most prevalent type of sink. There are people who have porcelain sinks. Porcelain sinks are non-kosherable, and therefore you should cover them. If you can get a sink insert, they even sell them on Amazon. Just try to put a link to that. Definitely, that's the easiest way to go. You could line your sink with aluminum foil. You can buy a regular tub, put a hole in it for the drain. There are different variety of ways of covering your sink. That's for sinks that are not kosherable. Um, Sprayers. Sprayers have small holes. This comes down to level of confidence. If you're filling up pots, food with it, if you have pots on the fire and you're refilling pots, some people have these sprayers, they have small holes, steam goes up, they can become chametz stick. If you're fairly certain yours is dirty and chametz stick, our recommendation is not to kosh them, not to use it on Pesach. So you could not use it, you could replace it. They're actually very easy to replace most of them. You'd be surprised. You get the right part number, and if it's a big box in stock item, they're very easy to get. And it's literally unscrewing it and screwing the new one on. It's important that if you have a pull down hose, either from the base benefit sprayer or a pull down sprayer, it's important that when you're koshering to kosher the hose as well. Okay. Some people have a stringency to cover them if they're not confident that they can get them clean. Okay. Those are our counters and sinks. Yeah. Again, a lot of this is going to come down to how confident you are that it stays Pesach thick. So you can have an older couple or a young couple who says, we never use it for that. I can't argue with them. But I'm saying in a standard kitchen, those things get pretty dirty. And if you look carefully, you'll see they get dirty and they need to be kosher. So either cover it and put it away. And obviously that becomes much more difficult of just covering it and not using it if it's your primary hose. If someone cannot get a new one and it is their primary faucet. So as far as covering goes, the ideal thing I would recommend is to cover it in like a cheesecloth so you can still use the water. And if you're not comfortable doing that, is to immerse it in ammonia solution with water. Obviously, make sure it's not dangerous. So diluting it or dip it into bleach. You can leave it like overnight in a cup of bleach. That way, anything in there is completely nifsa me'achilas kelab. You don't have to worry about that. That is the most common koshing that people are doing. We're going to move on to ovens now. Ovens and stovetops. Start with ovens. If you have a self-cleaning oven, and it's very important to delineate. Self-cleaning is high heat self-clean, not steam clean, not aqua clean, not aqua lift, and all those other fancy new ones. Self-clean is the high temperature ones, the ones that get to 900 or 1,000 degrees. If you have one of those ovens, put on self-clean, it's kosher. Burns everything out. And you'll see if you didn't clean your oven very well before you self-clean it, you will have to clean it afterwards because now your oven is full of ash. It's kosher for Pesach ash, but it's full of ash. So you wipe it out. The glass door. Some people have a custom because the Ashkenaz custom is not to cover glass. Some people have a custom to cover it with aluminum foil. Simplest way to do it, if that is the custom, is to take the aluminum foil, wrap it around the front outside of the oven, and use masking tape over there. You're not going to start fires by putting masking tape on the outside of the oven. So that's what we tell people if that's their custom. Make sure you're not blocking any ventilation. Super important. Okay. There's ventilation on the bottom of the door, there's ventilation on the top of the door. Do not block it. So if you're just covering the solid area of the glass door, you wrap it around the outside, put masking tape on the outside. It's a relatively safe bet. If you do not have so as far as the rack, A lot of people say, oh, you can't, and the company's going to say you cannot self-clean with the racks in the oven. Especially that's the official rule. So if you don't want to do that, there are ways you can treat your oven like a non-self-cleaning oven. I don't know why people would go through the bother of self-cleaning their oven if they're not self-cleaning the racks. That's probably the part of the oven that needs the most caution. So if you're not talk about not self-cleaning your oven. Now, what's going to happen is if you self-clean your oven racks, you're going to lose the shiny finish on them often, and sometimes they'll squeak when you put them back in. As far as squeaking when you put them back in, like little vegetable oil or mineral oil sprayed on that, you solve the problem of the squeakiness. Back in my experience, I'm not telling people to not follow the rules, but this has been my experience. If you do not have a self-cleaning oven or you do not want to self-clean your oven, it is important to let the oven sit idle for 24 hours. And that should be noted for any type of koshering that's not leaving gum, or including the e-ray on the sinks, pouring the boiling water on the sinks. It's very important that it's idle for 24 hours and is not used. After that, we do the koshering. Non-self-clean oven, idle for 24 hours, make sure it's completely clean. Okay. If there's a really, really stubborn spot, and everyone has their own, level of what's considered stubborn, but kosher agencies have a very low tolerance. When we're koshering in the kitchen, they use razor scrapers at wire drill brushes to get all gunk off the oven. Carbon buildup gets scraped off and everything else. Once the oven is completely clean, completely clean, burn it out on the highest temperature. The KVH recommendation is for an hour and a half. That is because it can take anywhere from 15 minutes to 25 minutes to get the oven up to the highest temperature on preheat, depending on the oven, how good it is, it's gas, it's electric, etc. And then from there, we want it to burn out for an hour. That's the standard protocol. I'm going to move on. So those are your two types of ovens. Now, if you have a convection oven, they're much harder to clean. They're more delicate, but the premise is the same. Obviously, the glass tray goes back to your custom, whether you're Sephardic or Ashkenazic. If you're Ashkenazic, don't use the tray in your convection oven / microwave. We'll get to microwaves in a minute, but don't use the tray. They're generally much more delicate to clean, so you got to be careful. The premise would be the same. Get it completely clean, and then burn it out on the highest temperature for an hour and a half. Okay. We are going to talk about microwave ovens. Microwave ovens depends on your rabbi. If your rabbi allows you to kosher it, we're talking to those people. His rabbi recommends. KVH doesn't give a recommendation on koshering ovens because it's very personal. So different rabbis come down different ways. If your rabbi is allowing you to kosher a microwave, the way of koshering microwaves, take a cup, 16-ounce, 20-ounce cup of water, put it in there, highest power, 10 minutes. Obviously, it's got to be completely clean. That thing will steam up the microwave, completely steam it up. That's the method of koshering. Now, it's important the spot under the cup is not necessarily kosher yet, so move the cup after about 10 minutes and do it again. Highest power setting for 10 minutes, let it steam up. If you're koshering a microwave, that's the way to do it. Not everyone koshers a microwave for Pesach. Someone wants a recommendation. Some people have the built-in ones. It's very important for them. Talk to your rabbi if that's what you're going to do. You can buy a $30 microwave in Walmart also if that's just the microwave is important for you and not the space. That's those are personal things to know what your custom is on microwaves. Stovetops, very important. I think almost everyone wants to use their stovetop even more than their ovens for Pesach. Can't get away without it. Easiest stovetop to kosher is the old style electric coil stovetops. Our recommendation when doing those is you turn the burners on and make sure obviously it's clean all around and whatnot. Turn them on the highest, they turn glowing red hot, you kosher Pesach. If you have grates that sit on top of those need to be koshered separately. The recommendation we have for those is to put them in the self-cleaning oven. Obviously, if you don't want to ruin the finish on them, that becomes a concern. They can be torched, they can be put on someone else's gas oven, and they need some fire exposure. The electric heating coil is not gonna kosher them. So they either need to be kosher by putting them on a gas stovetop, which we'll get to, and koshering them like that. They can be koshered in a self-cleaning oven, they can be koshered by torching them. But the actual coil, if you're putting a pot straight on those are kosher when they turn glowing red. The space in between, our recommendation is to cover it with some sort of aluminum foil. Also, taking care, you're not blocking any areas that need ventilation. So that's the area under the coil. It's the area in the back of the stove. You block vents, it's dangerous and it can cause a fire and it can break your oven. So don't block any ventilation. Only cover hard, solid surfaces. And that's pretty much it for electric coil stovetops. Should we jump to the next easiest one or the hardest one? Hardest one. Hardest one is the glass electric stovetops. Okay, not induction. Induction is slightly easier. Because the only concern by the induction we really have is the glass being Ashkenazic. When you come to the gas electric range, you have all the problems put together. If you're Ashkenazic, it's glass. Ashkenazic custom is not to cover glass. You have the issue that how are you going to, if you could kosher glass, if you're Sephardic, how are you koshering the glass, especially the areas in between, and even the areas where it is, you need Lieben Gummer. Is it getting to Lieben Gummer? It's not getting, the glass is not getting glowing red. Maybe the coil underneath is. So how are you going to do Lieben Gummer? You're going to blowtorch the glass? You're going to break it. So what do you do here? There aren't amazing answers. There are some modern day solutions as follows. First thing is make sure it's completely clean, not used for 24 hours. That's always your basis. Then you're going to turn on the burners. We tell you one at a time so you don't build up too much heat and possibly break something, but some people do it all at one time. Our recommendation is one at a time, maybe two at a time. Turn on the highest for 10 minutes. That's the most you're going to do. End of story. Now, what do we do now? You might say it's okay if you're Sephardic. I don't know. The other thing is the preferential treatment in halacha is not to use the surface. How do you do that? So for induction burners, a non-ferrous metal pot, they make these little discs that can magically convert every pot into an induction pot by conducting the heat directly into the disc. So if those discs, you don't need them on your regular stove, but they can go on your regular stove. It's just a flat metal disc. We have a link to it on our page, in our guide, in our digital guide. It's on our website. You can click on it. It's these little, what they call induction diffuser plates. You put it on your stovetop and you put your pot on top of that. You still run the risk at all, even as far as glass goes. I mean, you can pour boiling water over it, and that there is a recommendation to pour it. We don't take responsibility if it cracks, so be careful whatever you do. But that area is not kosher, so just be aware of that. Even when you're using the discs, put your pot on the disc. Don't put anything down on the metal itself. Covering it would be a solution, but what are you going to cover it with to make sure it doesn't break? Now, there is this invention called the cooktop mat. We have a link for it on the website. It was a non-Jewish company that was recommended to me, I forget, by one of my colleagues in Ashgacha a number of years ago. And it was like a company that wasn't going anywhere. And he has these silicon mats that are rated, or non-silicon mats that are rated to withstand up to 1400 degrees. Some of the new ones up to 2000 degrees. You can cover your cooktop with them. They're meant to keep the surface spread free and clean. Looks like a frum person hijacked the whole program and maybe even bought it out and goes, wow, there is some kosher money to be made here. He got Haskell from the COR in Toronto. At one point, the Starcade was doing it, but he got Haskell from the COR in Toronto. There's recommendations on the letter of certification how to use them. You can cover your stovetop with them after you turn the burners on the highest and burn them off. And voila, you got a cover for your Pesach stove now. The recommendation is to use separate ones for milkfix and flakes. Things spill in there and stay on there, and it's like a placemat. You wouldn't want to use the same placemat for milkfix and flakes. It's actually you're not allowed to. So one for milkfix, one for flakes. It's all beautiful. Even for during the year, if you want to use like the whole stovetop for milkfix, whole stovetop for flakes. You have a cover for it. It's called the cooktop mat. We have a link to it on our website. We have a link to it in our digital Pesach guide that went out on Jewish Boston. Feel free to email me, ask me afterwards for a link. Those are, I think, the best solution that you can do. We'll leave it at that. Gas, probably one of the most common. They're not for long. And we'll probably have to wrap it up after we deal with a little more koshering, right? For wrapping it up. Okay. Gas stovetops, you have your grates and you have the burners. I'm going to tell you what I personally do, and this is not a recommendation. This doesn't constitute legal advice and whatever other fine print I need to say. This is what I personally do. And I grew up with my parents doing this. We take the grates off, we take those little burner cups off and everything else. We put in a self-cleaning oven. And the first year, yeah, the finish gets a little ruined, and after that, it's ruined anyway because you had it for 2 years. We haven't had major cause for concern. That's what we personally do. And after that, it's kosher. So then we'll kind of like line the rest of the surface with aluminum foil, put all those pieces back in place. And obviously, again, making sure we're not covering any venting in the back or underneath those little burners, but we put all those pieces back and it's kosher. Again, if you don't want to do that, the recommendation is as follows. We're going to cover the stovetop and burn it out. Do not cover the whole stovetop at one time. That's one way to burn out the electrical panel in the back or the front if you have one of the sliding stoves. If you want to break it, if you want to take advantage of it, do that, but don't tell them you did it. You will break it. Okay, that's a sure way to burn out your electrical panel. cover the whole thing and turn on fires on high. You will break it. Been there, done that, and had to deal with the consequences. We recommend 1 or 2 burners at a time. So we found 2 burners to be safe. When we train the wild, you see the reference to Kosher people's homes, we generally recommend 1 front, 1 back. That way, kind of, you're not doing 2 back ones where all the heat's going up. So you have 1 front, 1 back, 1 front, 1 back, kind of disperses the heat. We do that. We train them to turn it on low for 10 minutes, medium for 10 minutes, high for 10 minutes. Your concept. The concept of going higher, higher is that you're not stuck in any one area with too much heat and possibly busting it. And that's the concept of doing 2 at a time and doing it slowly. So at 10 minutes or maybe a little less than 10 minutes, low, medium heat. That's our recommendation of how we kosher them. You cover it with, I don't know, 3 layers of heavy duty aluminum foil. Make sure it's perforated so it's vented. You're kosher. Alternatively, you could take a blech, Pesach blech, chametz blech. Our recommendation is take a chametz blech, cover it, and turn the fires on high. Again, if you have a blech covering the whole stove, you run the risk of burning out the pan. So if you have a half blech, that could work. You know, a 2 burner blech might work. We'll just induction burner. Induction burner is an interesting thing. This has been debated in the posting. How does induction get its heat? You create a magnetic field, and the magnetic field generates the heat into the pot. Your stovetop actually does not really generate heat. Your pot is the heat medium. It's your heat source. So things spill on the stove and make it chametz stick, or let's say it was non-kosher. How did it become non-kosher? If you think about it, with Eroy, by spillage. That's not your heat source down below. Your heat source is your pot. So one of the thoughts we had, again, you still have the issue of koshering glass. If your rabbi allows the koshering of glass, you got to deal with that. If not, revert back to all the other methodologies. The cooktop mat is compatible, according to the website. The cooktop mat is compatible with induction burners. It's thin enough that the metal still creates a magnetic field. So you could still cover it with the cooktop mat. But if not, and your rabbi is comfortable with using kosher glass top, or your Svartic, and then it is you don't need a kosher or it's kosherable. Take your induction pot, fill it with water, boil it. While the magnetic field is still there, obviously using hot gloves like barbecue gloves. Okay, let it boil over and move it around so it gets to space underneath the pot. And there is your Eroy while it's boiling over. So it's, or you can just put like a hot rock in the pot and let the whole thing spill over. Okay, and that koshers the glass if glass is kosherable. That's the opinion after discussing with a number of Rabbanim. That seems to be the opinion because your heat source is not underneath that. It's considered dry heat. Your heat is the pot. And the way it's becoming usher is things spilling over. So it's spilling over from a kli on the fire. This is that's our recommendation how we describe. So hot plate. Hot plate is discussing with different, but again, glass hot plate is going to solve the problem glass. Can you conquer glass? I'm sorry? So the interesting is the hot plate, you should be able to with the stove. You treat it very similar to a stove, whether you can conquer it or not. Okay. Other people say, you know, the recommendation might be if you have a hot plate, get a Pesach one. Someone can't afford a Pesach one, treat it like a stove. The reason we don't tell people just go get a Pesach stove, you know, in Israel, everything's like plug and play. They got like little stove tops. You know, over here we got big, hefty appliances. Half the people have like commercial size appliances nowadays in their home kitchens. Yeah, go get a new stove for Pesach. It's not very practical. So someone might say, just get a new hot plate for Pesach. Some people will do that, and other people will say, I can't do that. I can't afford it. It doesn't work for me. I don't have storage. So again, these are questions for Rabbanim. But if you're treating it like a stovetop, using the cooktop mat is a very good solution. Or even covering in foil and then using the cooktop mat. These are solutions. Okay. Moving on, koshering. Pots, if you're doing Haggadah, they need Haggadah. Okay, they need to be immersed in hot water or they need to be boiled over the top. Again, handles, rims of the pot, very, very important. I just showed someone. We were koshering commercial steam kettles. These are giant 40, 60 gallon kettles in commercial space. And one of them had like a nameplate that was welded on. And I was telling you, Mashgiach, I said, come here, watch this. I took one of my small blowtorches, the handheld one, and we blowtorched that nameplate. We didn't do it enough that we like unwelded it or unsoldered it, but what came oozing out, grease came oozing out from under it. Because you get a whole year of buildup from there. And it leaches its way into those crevices and everything. And you put a blowtorch on there, and all of a sudden you see it oozing out. Try it at home. Hold that little rim of your pot over the fire and see what happens. You might discolor the pot a little, but you'll see stuff start oozing out. So it's very important when you have crevices like that. If you can't get them clean, don't use it for Pesach. And if you think you can, make sure you get like a knife in there and you're scraping it out because there is buildup by the handles. If you have welded on handles, you often not have that. This was like a nameplate that had space, to get stuff in. But if you have solid welded handles, you obviously have less of an issue. Um, but anytime you have, pinch welds or anything like that, there's potential of stuff getting built up. Flip your pot upside down and look at those corner pinch welds and see if you can see anything in there. Very often there's buildup in there. Baking pans and roasting pans need leave-in gummer, full scorching. They will not hold up. Take your cookie pans. People will ask me, "Can you blowtorch it for me?" Yeah. Can you sign a waiver? I mean, you always want me to sign a waiver, but like sign a waiver because I know I will be destroying it. You can't kosher them properly. That's sheet pans, cookie pans, baking pans, roasting pans, anything like that. Enamel coated pans are usually considered like a kvicheres, so even pots. The minig is not the kosher. We treat it like a non-kosherable item. Um, you can't. Oh, enamel? I take no responsibility. I've done it. I've ruined them. I've done it and ruined them. Other people claim to have done it and they survived. A lot of them are aluminum. You heat aluminum to 900 degrees. You They're very difficult because they make them a safety feature. You can't get inside while they're self-cleaning until they cool down to like 400 degrees. So, or even less. Very difficult. I guess theoretically you could put, if you have a high heat probe, you could. Come to think of it, maybe I should try it. If you have like a high heat, like barbecue probe, a lot of those things can go up to 1400 degrees. And those things, the oven will still seal even with one of those wires sticking out. That's an interesting idea. Put a probe inside a self-clean oven, see how hot it gets. Or try that out. Small appliances like toasters, sandwich makers, panini presses, electric grills. 20 years ago, I said, what do you need a panini press on Pesach for? Not anymore, not anymore. You have a shahakal bagels. Yes, you need your panini press for Pesach, but sadly, we cannot kosher this properly. You will strip all those nonstick surfaces off those, koshering them properly. Um, Other small appliances, food processors, mixers, immersion blenders. Ideally, you want separate ones because you got so many nooks and crannies, and sometimes the bases aren't sealed. It's notoriously difficult to clean. In times of great need, I remember we had COVID, you couldn't get stuff and this and that. So people asked the rabbis, and the rabbi said, cover this area, cover that area, have a separate bowl for Pesach. So it's not something that has a reason to prohibit it, but the reason is they're notoriously difficult to get them completely clean from summits. Items like your mixers and your food processors. Um, okay. Flatware, pretty straightforward. Unless you have intricate flatware, most of those designs are not trapping food in them. Sometimes you have super intricate flatware where it can, even like a batter. Most batters are not trapping food in it. Batter is a very common thing people want to coffee. You have a clear cup. Most of them I've seen, you have the designs, they're surface designs, they're etched. But sometimes you have like an ornate one, and sometimes you see stuff that gets stuck in it. So those ones obviously need a lot more care for cleaning before you can kosher it. Oh, talking about pots and pans, one of the things what works wonders is get like a stiff wire brush. You can buy a set in Home Depot for like $6. Buy them on Amazon. A wire brush really helps cleaning out that stuff. Um, just a general pro tip for cleaning during the year. Okay. Refrigerators. Many people have accustomed to line the refrigerator shelves. Obviously, if the requirement is to clean it. If you're lining it and you have wire racks, make sure they're perforated so you can get circulation, or you're gonna have a bad refrigerator. Okay. Questions? Oh, I left you guys a question. Finish up with that. Why did we go out of Mitzrayim? Any answers? Any answers?
Slavery ended, but make two kinds of time, there's not much slaves left,
They were our slaves.
And yeah, but then we were called that.
Sure, we do this. So, Valkyrie, where does it say that Mitzrayim was like Gan Eden? Wow. But you thought this ain't of a Yaris Kokika Hayard. You saw the whole thing of the yard. It was kula mashka, saturated with water. Kigan Hashem keretz Mitzrayim. I saw one of the midrashim say, where is Sodom nowadays? It says Yam Hamelech Zuhi Sodom. The Pirish on the side. This is what happened. What happened, Balkari? What happened to Sodom? It says Hashem flipped over. It was a mapecha. And Guffers Vamelech Sreifa Kalarza. So where is the saturation of water? And we'll talk about why it went there. Where's the saturation? Where's water if you have a saturated land? It's underneath. Hashem flipped it over. The land went down. The water came up, and then sulfur and rain came down, and Yam HaMelech was born. Fascinating thing. That is the Kikar Hayarden. Fascinating. That's the Jordan River Basin over there. Talk about when like midrashim and like science and like geography align, you know. The answer is a pasuk in Kriya Shema. We say at least twice a day for men. Women maybe also say it, but you know, what do we say at the end of Kriya Shema? Let's go. Ani Hashem Elokeichem asher tzeisi eschem me'eretz Mitzrayim liyos lechem lelekim. In order to be your God, I took you out of Mitzrayim. It's a great answer. It's pasuk. These are all pasukim. What was behind that? Why couldn't he be our God in Mitzrayim? Why? Now we're getting somewhere. Akev. Hashem is contrasting Moshe Rabbeinu. We're talking to us. We're contrasting where we came from to where we went. The bad to the good. Now, if I'm going to tell you the bad parts about Mitzrayim, what would you pick? Slavery, death, disease, all the things that were going on. Throwing babies into the water. What is the contrast? And if you're going to tell me about Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Zavas Chalav Dvash, great place, right? No, we don't pick that. Eretz Asher Tabasham Larishta, the land that you are going to inherit. Eretz Yisrael. Look, Eretz Mitzrayim. Asher Hishpisa B'Rablacha Kigan Hayarik. That you would water like a vegetative garden. What a way to talk about the bad parts of Mitzrayim. You could have chosen disease, death, slavery. No. It's not like that place that was like a vegetative garden, like by Sodom, that it was like Gan Eden. Not like that. What is it? Rather, Eretz Harum B'Kai. It's a land of mountains and valleys. You have to rely on the rain from the sky. What a contrast over here. What's the message? Mitzrayim was a place. Another Pirish we saw. What was the dream of Paro? We talk about going to Mitzrayim. Paro had a dream: 7 years of hunger, 7 years of famine, 7 years of plenty. First, it says the Nile River traditionally, and this is until today, Egypt can go 100 years without rain and has a thriving agriculture business. I know this in Kosher. We certify frozen fruits and vegetables in Egypt. It's thriving over there. Or we had fancy big fat lulav, and where did all of our lulav come from? El Arish. Egyptian lulav. That's where they all came from. The Egyptians knew what they were doing. Thriving agriculture, and yet no rain. Nile River would overflow every 7 years, fill up these thousands of year old irrigation canals, saturate the whole land of Mitzrayim. They were good to go. This Pirish I saw says they were going to miss that one time. 7 years of famine. So Egypt is a place, thriving agriculture, no rain, don't need rain. Israel, land of mountains. Even if you have a river on the mountain, hard to get that water because it is going down. Where do you get the water from? The Matar HaShamayim Tishta. What is the following psukim right after that? Also what we say in Kriya Shema, how do you get the Matar HaShamayim? V'chaya im Shamayim Tishma. You listen to Hashem, you follow the mitzvahs, you do what Hashem wants, you get rain. You don't, he kicks you out, no rain, Atzar HaShamayim, you don't get anything. What was Lot doing? Why did he separate from Avram? Why was he going to a place that was cool mashke? Like you saw Lot to say, he was looking for a place to go. What was the problem? The shepherds were fighting. What was Lot letting his shepherds do? He was letting his animals graze in other people's fields. He was letting them steal. Why does someone steal? Well, they don't believe Hashem can provide for them. If Hashem could provide for them, why would you steal? What happens right after that story of Lot? What does it say? The land of mountains and valleys. What does Hashem do? He took Avraham the whole land. The Ark of Uracha, that was right after that. He was showing him this land. It's a special land. This is a land for people who want to have to rely on Hashem. And until today, what's like the big focus? Before we had terrorism. So they're not talking about terrorism, is what they're talking about? The water levels. We're in rain. This is Pesachim. I'm like, it's right there. There's no secrets. We haven't said any fancy midrashim yet. All we've done is quoted Pesachim in the Haggadah. Everyone's favorite part of the Haggadah, what every secular person knows more than Manashtana, Dayenu. What is the first stanza in Dayenu? Ilo Hotziyanu miMitzrayim v'la asabahem shafatim. Shafatim. If he would have taken us out of Egypt, but hadn't done the judgments. The judgments were the plagues, judging them, punishing them. We know that they had the plagues on the sea, right? But where were the main plagues? Where did the main makos happen? In Mitzrayim before he took us out. So why don't we start with Ilu Asa B'hem Shvatim V'lo Hotziyanu Me'eretz Mitzrayim? We never start with that. Prerequisite for this. There was no Dayenu. It would not have been enough. We had to leave Mitzrayim. There's non-starter. You don't leave Mitzrayim, there's no Dayenu. Mitzrayim was a place where people could go, not believe in Hashem. Don't need the water. We have the water. We don't need the rain. Don't need to daven to Hashem. No v'hayam shema tishmu. We don't need it. We go, we're going with our merry lives. They turned the Nile River into a god so they can cut out the higher power over there. The Nile River gives us our sustenance. To add on to this, Moshe Rabbeinu had a fight with the Nile, with the Yam Suf, right? What was a fight in Medrash says? He went over there and he told him split. There, this is not happening. Why? Because I was created second day, you were created a sixth day. I'm before you. What's this weird conversation going on? Who was created first? Was this like a power struggle? War take going on. Hashem separates the water. You have Maimel, you have the top waters, you have the bottom waters. The bottom waters, the seas, the rivers, the oceans, the Nile River, the Jordan River, the Kikar Hayarden, the Kulamashki, all that water, the bottom water flows. Even lakes, there's always a ripple. It's always moving. That was the Tzivah of Hashem. Hashem created bottom water, lakes, all the surface water, always moves. Whether it flows like a river or ripples like a lake, it's always moving. Even still water, if you want a still lake, you'll always see a tiny, tiny movement in the lake. It's always moving. Rain, Gemara, Tinus, Daf Beis. One of the three keys that's in Biyad Hashem, not Biyad Malachim, hands of Hashem, only Hashem can tell water to move. Water tells Moshe Rabbeinu, you created on the sixth day. I am a tzivah before you. My job is to move, not to stop. Hashem had to tell the water, new tzivah, now you stop. Now you become like the water that serves the Jews. The Matara Shemayim Tishta. The water that you have to daven for. Moshe Rabbeinu was there davening to Hashem. He says, now you're the top water serving Bnei Yisrael. In order to get out of Mitzrayim, in order to go on, Hashem couldn't be our God. That was a place for people to go who didn't want to have to serve Hashem. He needed us to come to Eretz Yisrael, Eretz Harim Vukas, L'Matara Shemayim Tishta. That was how he could be our God over there. And so 2 more points in this. The worst part about Sodom, we're all taught as kids, they were mean people. They were bad people, right? Bad people. This, I don't think it's a haftarah. I don't know if you know the pasuk in Yisrael. Avon achos Sodom, right? It talks about our sisters, our different nations, right? The sin of our sister Sodom. What was it? It doesn't start off that they were just bad people. How does it start off? Gaon sivas lechem hayula. Had a guy of a haughtiness of thinking from the bread. This is biblical talk. So what does that mean? They had everything they needed. It was Kikar Hayarin. It was Kulimashka. They didn't have to daven to Hashem. It was like Mitzrayim. They had river water. They had bottom water. They didn't need daven. It caused them the haughtiness. What happened because of that? It wasn't the other way around. It started because they got comfortable. They didn't need Hashem. It's ours. And therefore, not the other way around. It all started with not believing in Hashem. Now, end off on a little lighter note. Lot was a conundrum. He, on the one hand, he let his shepherds steal. He let the sheep steal. He was looking for a place not to believe in Hashem, like Mitzrayim. We had to get out of there. He goes there, and what do we find him doing? We find him baking matzah on Pesach, according to the Medrash, right? And doing hachnasas archim, according to the Pesachim. Did he or did he not believe in Hashem? So the answer talks to me is, Lot was just a regular guy. We're all good Jews. Get up, come to davening. What time is davening here in the morning? It's early, 6:45. 6:50, it's early, right? You get up, Hashem, I'm davening with me. Not only that, I'm going to say the daf yomi shir and shul before davening at 5 o'clock. I'll even say a shir. I'll go to shir at night and I'll say another shir. But God, that real estate business, you leave that to me. It's my business. Don't get mixed in my parnasa. My business, let me run it the way I want. I'll do everything else you want. This is like you lose sight. You see, I'll do Torah mitzvahs, but like my parnasa, my reign, that I need to be in control. So it's like not to lose sight. So I'll end up with this. Everyone has their own thing going on in them. But our Yitzias Mitzrayim, we say we should that we have to see ourselves like we went on Mitzrayim every year. Everyone has their own personal Egypt in them that they need to leave. I have mine. Everyone has theirs, and as community, we have our own as Klal Yisrael. We have our Mitzrayim that we have to get out of. We do so much Torah mitzvahs. We do so many mitzvahs. It's insane. There hasn't been this much chesed in Klal Yisrael in years across the spectrum. The insanity of what goes on. Anyone in the community is involved in any part of it, whether it's the new and improved Rofe and Chaverim and the crazy stuff. 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll have a Chaverim call, or I've been at 11 o'clock and you change someone's flat tire. Like, what is wrong with people? Why would you do that? And the amount I don't know if anyone here is on the Chesed Boston group. If you're not, get on it just to see what goes on. The amount of Chesed people are doing, but there's a certain part that every time we have to do more and we have to let go and we have to get out of our own Mitzrayim. So I'll end this off that we should each see ourselves our own way, how to get out of Mitzrayim, but even more so as a community, to do even more to rely on Hashem, to have that, to be that sustenance that we're the Matar Shemayim Tishta. Everyone should have a Chag Kosher v'Samech. I'm here for a few minutes for questions. This was recorded, so we'll end that recording